Hi, this is Gail Robinson, President of the Ash Creek Conservation Association, and I want to talk to you about living with climate change. We've already experienced climate change, and I want to just take a look at what we've experienced and what we can expect moving forward. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, is viewed as the most credible source for sea level rise predictions. And they issued an alarming report in April of 2023, earlier this year. They stated they expect global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade will occur by 2040. And they stated that with a 98% certainty among their scientists. If you look at the graph on the right, you'll see this is just a fact. World is warming. And these are just actual numbers. And you'll see it started in the industrial era, and it's been increasing over time, over the past century. Along with global warming, we have sea level rise, because as the ice caps at the North and South Pole and glaciers start to melt, that raises our sea level. And sea level rise lags. So even if we were to stop global warming today, the effects would increase over time through 2100. The projections vary greatly in terms of sea level rise because there is a tipping point that can be reached when the South Antarctic ice shelf melts. Just that alone could raise sea levels another 11 feet. We are pretty close to the tipping point, or we may have reached it. We're not really sure. The science isn't there to determine that. But if and when that happens, that would be another 11 feet. To see what's possible, we need to look back to the past. When our planet was 4 to 5 degrees warmer, there was virtually no ice at either pole. Sea levels were 200 feet higher than they are today. The photo in this slide shows that water would be at the level of the shoulders of the Statue of Liberty at 200 feet. At some point, those of us in flood zones and low-lying areas will need to migrate inland. In 2021, Circa published a 52-page report on a hypothetical retreat of our residences from the Connecticut shoreline. It's an 82-page report, but I read it. I thought it was pretty fascinating. The report was about how we can encourage people to not only stop building along the shoreline, but how to get them to move inland. If you're shocked by this, you're not the only one. Right now, we're in a state of denial. FEMA flood insurance is still available and it's affordable to the wealthy, so people keep buying properties in harm's way. Shoreline properties are still in demand. You can see that down at Fairfield Beach. Homes were rebuilt after Sandy along the shoreline, and the elevated homes that are built there offer a sense of reduced risk. But low-lying, affordable housing without water views is not as desirable due to flood insurance costs, but they are still selling. In this photo, you can see a photo of somebody canoeing down the street in Seaside Village after Hurricane Sandy. That's an area that's low-lying, for example. Not too close to the shoreline, but it's inland, but it is low-lying. Any amount of sea level rise is problematic for our shoreline because it raises the normal high tide level. And that means that any storm surges that come along are going to be higher. And that's compounded by the fact that the storm surges are expected to increase in frequency, severity, and to accelerate over time due to the storms that are expected. The worst case scenario currently is a storm surge of 17 feet. Sandy was only 9 to 10 feet. And if you take a look at this photo of Seaside Village, that was taken from the Resilient Bridgeport project. And it shows Sandy basically came in and filled up the streets and filled up basements, but it didn't cover the first floor. The worst case scenario, the water would come up to the second floor. A lot of people don't realize that we've already had a 5-inch rise in sea level since 1964 along the Connecticut coastline. The Connecticut coastline is actually a hot spot with faster sea level rise than other areas. Circa at Yukon has predicted a 3.3-foot sea level rise along our coastline by 2100. Our coastline is vulnerable to flooding because we've destroyed so much of our marshland, which serves as a buffer, and also because we've put ourselves in harm's way by developing our residential properties right along the coastline. In our master plan, we took a look at the marshland that we've lost, which serves as a buffer or a sponge for storm surges and flooding. Well, if we look at this map back in 1890, all the dark areas are marshland, and you can see how much there were. By 1990, you can see a lot of that marshland is gone. There's a marina there, and people have built homes all along Fairfield Beach and up through Black Rock between Ash Creek and the Post Road, Fairfield Avenue. By 2100, if we keep going at the rate we're going, we will not have any tidal wetlands in Ash Creek. And that is due to the sea level rise that we're talking about. This slide shows the buildup along the coastline since 1934. As you can see in the photo on the left, the South Benson Marina hadn't been built yet, and a lot of the homes had not been constructed along the coastline. And you can also see that on the Black Rock side as well. We stole this slide from the Resilient Bridgeport website. They did an analysis of severe rain events that have occurred, and they started tracking them. And the point of this is that it's not just sea level rise that's going to be affected by climate change. We are also going to be impacted by severe rain events that will occur in greater severity and greater frequency as climate change goes on. Those frequent rain events will bring flooding. So the frequency of flooding events is expected to increase. By 2030, Bridgeport, Fairfield area will have 3 times as much flooding as 2018 due to climate change. By 2045, flooding events could occur every few days in low-lying areas. Earlier this year, we published our master plan, and in that we took a close look at how the sea level rise is going to affect our shoreline along Ash Creek. And as you can see, there are a couple of scenarios here, one on Davidson Street and another one on Kenwood Ave, based on a 2-foot sea level rise, 4-foot sea level rise, and a 6-foot sea level rise. 2 more views from the master plan, one along Gilman Street at the intersection of Bomforth. And as you can see, at a 2-foot sea level rise, the water would get up to the level of the sidewalk, but not get into the street. At a 4-foot sea level rise, Gilman Street is covered with water. And at a 6-foot sea level rise, the water starts to go up the hill, up Bomforth. On the right-hand side, you see Beachview Avenue, and you can see that one of the homes is inundated at the 6-foot sea level rise level. 2 more views, this time on the Fairfield side, but we have Shoreham Terrace and Shoreham Village Drive. These views are also in Fairfield, the South Benson Marina parking lot and Turney Road. This is our barrier spit, and as you can see, at a 2-foot sea level rise, the spit is still pretty well intact. At a 4-foot sea level rise, we've lost some of our vegetation, and at a 6-foot sea level rise, it's completely washed over, and at that point, we would lose the barrier spit. So climate level change obviously has an impact on Ash Creek. We're already in a state of ecosystem collapse in our tidal estuary, as you know from our previous presentations. We've shown you that we've lost 60 linear feet of shoreline on our barrier spit, and we've lost 27,000 square feet of Great Marsh Island. So we're losing our buffer and sponge. Save the Sound is planning to spend $750,000 developing a restoration plan for Ash Creek over the next year. The restoration will use living shoreline techniques, and it should begin after that if federal funds are obtained. I included this slide for people who aren't familiar with our organization so that they could go visit our special issue site, saveourspit.org. If you haven't been there, take a look at it. But otherwise, I'm sure you stay up to date by getting our newsletter. So thank you for your support and your interest and for taking a look at this presentation.